I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic. Very much. Moving on, please silence your electronic devices as needed. It seems like we have a few people here this evening. If anyone's here to make a public comment, there is a sign up sheet in the back. You just need to sign up, put your name, phone number, and a little bit of information for the public comment period later on in the agenda. Motion to move the agenda to the table. Made by Mrs. Holmes, seconded by Ms. Galligan. Any discussion? All in favor? So ordered. Dr. Evans, any additions, deletions, or corrections to the agenda?
There are none tonight, Mr. President.
Thank you so much, Dr. Evans. Motion to adopt the agenda as is, made by Mrs. Rivera, seconded by Ms. Jersey. Any discussion? All in favor? So ordered. Approval of draft minutes July 6th for the reorganizational meeting. Made by Ms. Jersey, seconded by Ms. Galligan. Any discussion? All in favor? So ordered. Approval of draft minutes July 6th regular board meeting. Motion by Ms. Galligan, seconded by Mrs. Greco. Any discussion? All in favor? So ordered. Thank you very much. This evening, we have a presentation for school culture and climate needs assessment. I'll hand it over to Dr. Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Crumley. Good evening, everyone. Tonight, joining us from Alabreve Consulting is Dr. Nicole Aliotto. Just as a way of bringing the board back up to speed, you may recall that back in the, I guess, early spring, we conducted a comprehensive school culture and climate survey across all of our schools in our district and included a number of stakeholder groups. Most of the data, as you're going to see and have seen before, were collected through surveys, but we also, Dr. Aliotto and her team conducted individual interviews with our administrators. And we did this because we really wanted to get a good baseline measure of how our stakeholders perceive our schools and the district, and also to use that information to help develop goals and action plans and improvements for years to come. So after her presentation tonight, Dr. Aliotto will be staying somewhere nearby because tomorrow she'll be meeting with our administrators during our administrative retreat to not only go through these findings, but also to develop strategies and improvement plans and goals based off of those. So I know for me, one of my primary superintendent's goals is to improve overall school climate and culture, and I will be taking the things discussed tonight and tomorrow, including those in my goals for the upcoming year. So with that being said, I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Aliotto. Dr. Aliotto. Thank you.
Having me. I know I have to stand in a certain place.
Yeah.
The camera there. So thanks for having me. Thanks for allowing our team to work with their district. It's an exciting process for us because it allows us to, take the time to get to know your internal and external stakeholder groups and listen to what everyone has to say around a framework that I'll just review briefly tonight. And then we can compile findings and recommendations that we're hearing from those groups. We don't come in with any plans in our back pocket to say, oh, well, we've got this program now. Oh, how about that findings here? We looked at, as researchers, we're compiling evidence and presenting it back and working with your teams to develop those findings into insights and actions. We use we call it our laser process because we follow through these 5 steps from lead, assess, strategize, evaluate, and refine. You already had goals established and a variety of actions that were articulated. We came in and at the assess phase and focusing again on just 2 of those goals. But I thought I'd reframe it to something that's more of a strategic roadmap. This is like our flow chart, but if you could get to the next slide, it might be more familiar to look at a strategic planning process as a strategic roadmap where you have your mission and your vision and values. You've got your goals established. We're going to come in and reevaluate the process between based on the data that we've collected through this engagement. I'll talk about next steps and where we're going tomorrow a little bit later in the presentation. So as a review, again, our success and the climate and culture goals were the focus areas. We did a focus on the financial or fiscal stability. That's the component that drives all of the processes through your operational plans. And we did not go into the community engagement one. That could be a potential next step and next phase after this initial process looking at these two goals. Next slide. The framework that we use for our needs assessment is based on the 9 characteristics of high-performing schools. We've adapted them over the years to include ISTE, digital literacy, SEL, DEI, a variety of other components that are more timely and of current interest. There are items that we've identified over the years that have been not performing so well in the sense that everybody says that they agree, that because there's some social desirability based on the original study. And for those items, we remove them and put more timely items in their place. We've adapted those 9 characteristics for the study that we did in the spring to focus on the areas that were most aligned to the success and culture goals. So we can share links to the original study, but again, you saw some of the references to the adaptations in the report that we put together for the district. Moving right along, brief data collection summary. We did do the one-on-one interviews. My team did those via Zoom with all the administrators. We had a variety of surveys that were done internally and also with parents and guardians. And we also did a document review of different plans that were in place already, some data that were available around the school report card data. One of the questions that we get right away is this a good response rate? Is this what we should expect to see when we do a study like this? And this is not atypical. I would say that the non-instructional staff response rate was on the low end of what we typically would see. Parent and guardian, though, that is commonplace when we're doing this for the first time. If we were to do a blanket survey of the community, 8% is the going rate of a goal when you're just doing a blanket survey about satisfaction. When we're doing something targeted within a district and they should have some sort of invested interest in their responses, we tend to see 15 to 17% when it's the first time. And that's usually because, one, they've never been asked before. So there's questions about why am I doing, where's this going? We've had other feedback where it might have been missed in the administration. I know we did provide it in Spanish language as well as English language here. And another reason why we sometimes see a low parent or guardian response rate is they hadn't been asked before. When they were asked for input before, they didn't feel like it went anywhere. So these are just things that we've heard over the past 20 years, that when we hear a low response rate, but it's not uncommon, 15 to 17%. So we work with that. Start with the student response rate was strong, and we would typically expect to see 80 to 90% of students responding in grades 4 through 12. So to shortcut to the findings and key areas, we try to focus on one thing that comes out because we can't focus on everything. We try to look at where are those first entry points that if we focus on these areas, it will have a bigger impact. And one of the themes that kept emerging as a result of all of the data that we collected was around the construct of belonging. And I referenced Coyle from the Culture Code because they talk about belongingness cues, and he buckets it into safety and connections. And safety, not in the sense of physical safety, because those ratings were pretty strong across the board. People felt that it was a safe environment. And there were some elements of connections with students and other adults in their schools. But the broader sense of emotional safety, feeling safe and comfortable and expressing one's voice and having structures for collaboration and two-way communications and connections around respect and those elements of DEI that we would expect to see in the post-COVID environment, where you've got a lot of people who haven't been around each other for a while, and we have to reconnect with one another. That's not an uncommon finding, as we're finding in our needs assessments throughout the state. But if we were to focus on an area that was a repeated theme throughout all stakeholders and buildings, it fell into these categories. So I'll just kind of continue through the end, and then we'll come back for questions, if that's all right, Dr. Evans?
Yes.
Okay. So next step here, now that we're starting to collect some areas to explore, we'll be meeting tomorrow as part of the retreat. We're going to do the SWOT analysis, where we'll analyze strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. That's something that should be done on a regular basis as new data come in. In this case, we've got new data. We're going to SWOT. And sometimes I hear, oh, we SWOTted before. I remember 5 years ago we SWOTted, or last year we SWOTted. Well, when we have a variety of new data to include into the conversation, it's always good to reestablish, did we learn anything new from what we've collected? From there, we'll look at expected outcomes related to the goals and what we've learned from the SWOT, and look to fine tune some of the actions that were originally articulated along with the goals to see what are those areas that we should strengthen. Maybe there are some new tasks and strategies that should be considered now that we have more guidance from our stakeholder groups. We'll also look to collect or to identify evaluation measures. And not only are we going to have our strategies articulated, but how will we measure them in a formative and a summative way? So we're not going to wait 5 years to see whether something worked, but how are we making sure that we've got those short-term, intermediate, and long-term outcomes with measurable components. Once those plans are implemented, then that's where the refinement process comes along as we continue. If we go back to that framework, tomorrow we'll be working on these 3 areas: SWOT, priorities, and outcomes, connecting them to those existing goals. And then after tomorrow, we'll continue to work with the leadership teams and building teams to refine plans and see how we can support the evaluation of the implementation of those plans. Back to our framework, the evaluate and refine continues. And with the success and climate and culture areas underway, we can go ahead and discuss, after our meeting tomorrow, if we'd like to move into the community engagement and continue looking at that whole area using the same process. So I'll leave with my contact information and turn it over for any questions.
Any questions from the board about either presentation tonight or the survey that been provided?
Your report was very insightful, so I appreciate it. Thank you. Very thorough.
We are all social scientists on the team. We are very research driven, and we want to provide that comprehensive picture. So appreciate your feedback. Success rate is usually predicated upon the implementation process. We can do all the research in the world and work to get a direction, but if it falls short in the implementation side, then our work, again, feel like it's not that the work that we do isn't successful, but the success is really how do the teams continue to pick up those findings and retool moving forward. I'd say when leadership teams and our building teams have plans in place, have systems and structures in place to evaluate progress throughout and retool, because the goals stay in place for a number of years. I use the GPS thing. The needs assessment is telling us where we are, the goals are there where we want to be, how we're going to get there. It may change year to year. And so when teams can navigate the different routes that we might need to take along the way and can collaborate and retool and continue that progress, then we will see success in that direction. It's when that breaks down along the way, there's very little chance of change happening in the desired way. So that's why I always encourage, we can continue to work together. We are an accountability partner. We can come in mid-year and say, how are things going? So that if things do fall off with evaluation, I usually come in and they're like, oh, Nicole's coming, we better get our notes together. And so it serves as a reminder that, okay, how are we measuring this and how can we make sure that what we're implementing is having the desired effect? And if not, what should we be doing instead? I say that, I want to say it's always 100% success, but that's usually out of our hands. We're set up for success. Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, Dr.
Thank you.
Elliott.
Excited for tomorrow.
Yes, see you tomorrow. Have a good night. Thank you.
Stay away from the table. Stay away from the table. Down in the casino.
Oh, I'm not even going.
Thank you very much for that. We appreciate it. Moving on, Adriana,
I'd like the motion to accept the consent agenda F1 to M2.
have a second on that, made by Ms. Jersey. Any discussion? All in favor? So ordered. Thank you very much. Mrs. Greco,
I'd like the motion to accept the consent agenda F1 to M2.
seconded by Ms. Rivera. Any discussion? All in favor? So ordered. Moving on to information reports and discussions, board roundtable. I'll start off with Mrs. Holmes. Well, thank you. Ms. Rivera.
I have the pleasure of joining the Hall of Distinction Committee first meeting.
Very much. Ms. Brad. Russo.
The honor received for Boy Scouts from Troop 101 Rock Hill to the National Boy Scout Jamboree on in West Virginia for 10 days. And I'd like to say congratulations to our football team who they successfully completed a day of competition 5 days ago at SUNY Portland. The boys went 3-0 in divisional plan. Are going to find the first round, defeating Westboro, Watertown, and divisional opponent Forest Valley. They lost to St. Francis. And we have 40 days of service. Very excited for football season.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Gallagher.
I don't have much to report, but just to add to trustee Rivera, I actually was also at the Hall of Distinction. And if anyone is interested or would like to make any nominations, the nominations are open until August 13th, I believe is the correct date. So I just wanted to inform our community that nominations are being accepted to August 13th. They're planning the inductions for the month of November. So please feel free to tell us all about our great graduates of Monticello.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Gallagher. John.
I also attended the Hall of Distinction committee meeting. Ms. Gallagher, Ms. Rivera wrapped it up very well. And then also, I just wanted to say that I did go and see Oliver this last weekend, and I know that's not a specific board business, but I wanted to say that several of our current Monticello students, even one of our Monticello community retirees, is in the show. And so, like, if you want to support our students, it's a great way to support our students and the things they do outside the classroom.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jersey. One thing I would like to just remind everybody, I guess this would also be kind of doubling up on upcoming events. We do have our board roundtable, our board retreats, on Saturday, 9 to 3, central office. The agenda for the day basically will be board goals and then a little bit on just board basics. Just kind of going back over why we're here, what we're doing, just to kind of get us prepared for this upcoming school year. And so we're kind of, everybody's up to par and we're good to go for the upcoming school year. Any questions about that, just feel free to reach out. We should be having lunch and that's pretty much it on that. So moving on to director reports. Any questions, comments, concerns regarding those? So,
When you look at the, like, Word docs list of all the reports that should be in there,
yeah,
there's a lot missing,
yeah,
and there's often a lot missing.
yeah.
Is that something we want to ask administration to make sure happens?
How many of these people are out on vacation?
I don't know that it's often a lot, in terms of recurrent meetings. I did notice it tonight. I don't have an answer to that question, but I suspect it's some. I know a group last week was at a conference for most of the week. That might have curtailed that. Ms. Carlin?
So I probably should have checked with you, so I apologize, but my team shared that in the summer, you don't normally do reports, that it's only school year, and I don't know if that's been the case in the past, so I did not ask them to submit anything knowing that.
Okay, so we'll follow up with them.
Right, and there's a couple new people, like Shannon Mimi Levinson, like, I don't think she's been on there before.
Just approved her.
Right, so we just approved her, so I mean,
She may not know.
she may not know, and that's fine. Michelle McCoy is new too, but we've never seen a report from her. So I just, some people may not know.
We'll follow up.
And I know from previously, the special summer and after school programs really don't see anything separate for them. And I think especially during summer school would be advantageous for us to know how many people were enrolled, what's going on,
Right.
things of that nature.
We were getting reports regularly from her for a long time, but then we haven't in the past 6 months or year.
She's a part of SDNI, that we do that whole big newsletter. She's lumped in there, but
Oh, she is? Okay.
yeah, but to your point, there wouldn't have been anything in there about the summer during the school year, so we want something from her directly during the summer.
Summer plus healthy kids born after school, as parents are asking us questions about it and things of that nature. We direct them to her, but it would be nice to know how many kids are enrolled. Are we having issues?
We'll follow up.
Thank you.
Where, that's 6 rejected, what does that mean?
I was gonna ask that question myself, what exactly that Q where was, because it just, I've never seen that before.
Up under statuses.
That what Steve Lewis submitted.
Yes.
Everybody's working. So essentially, that's an employee on Stephen's staff. How many work orders are assigned to that person to get accomplished? So someone like unknown undefined is 72, because those actually probably haven't been rationed out to the personnel yet to take care of.
Why would 6 be rejected?
They just,
Took care of it already, or
or it's a capital project thing.
or
Right.
contractual,
or a contractual, or-
something of that nature.
To Jasper's report, I'm happy to see that the banners are in the process of being updated. Yeah, and then also the plaques. All championship plaques have been hung up outside the gymnasium.
Yeah, that's really, if you haven't had a chance to see it, I'd recommend you, next time you're in the neighborhood, to go look at those. It really looks nice.
New uniforms were ordered, cheerleading, trustee Ashley. Cheerleader uniform.
Thank you very much. So, moving on off of, director reports. You'll see correspondent outcomes. There is an inclusion in there regarding a little bit of digging into the valedictorian, salutatorian, and executive content.
And just, I'm sorry if I may, Dr. Furman did speak with the parent who sent the initial email, and they were satisfied with what Dr. Furman outlines here and appreciated the feedback, and that we are looking into it. Changes for the next graduation ceremony that would be discussed at the graduation committee.
So moving on to policy committee memo, Dr. Evans.
Yeah, so tonight we had a policy committee meeting where we reviewed and discussed the policies that are listed there. Many of them are going to be coming to the board for a first reading at the August 10th meeting. They have minimal changes and are primarily updates to allow us to, if appropriate and necessary, switch to remote and have an emergency closure and go to remote instruction next year for particular reasons. We'll see that's in most of the changes. The other change that the policy committee is recommending is in the public use of school facilities regulation. That would allow the grounds, the exterior grounds, to be open for public use from 8 to dark on any day of the week, and that we would be monitoring that to see how those facilities would be used and hopefully maintained. And the very last policy there under student eligibility is 5205. We will be convening an ad hoc committee to review that policy. I have received a number of concerns and questions about that policy over the past several years. The last time it was touched was during COVID because we knew that students would be struggling with academics during that time and we didn't want it to be too punitive during that year. However, in having discussions with Mr. Jasper and other administrators, we believe that it is appropriate not to revisit that. So there'll be a committee that reviews it, discusses changes. That committee will include stakeholders. That recommendation would then be brought to the policy committee. And if any changes are recommended from there, it will be brought to the whole board. So that will take several months. So keep you updated on progress.
Thank you very much, Dr. Evans. Once again, Dr. Evans on capital project updates.
Yes, so you have included in your reports, or I'm sorry, on your agenda, a detailed list from Chase on task 2 and task 3, which is the tennis court, correct? So we are still waiting on the coding to be applied to the tennis courts. I'm not sure what the delay is at this point. I know what it was last week, but hope that it would be starting very soon. Once that goes down, then they're just going to kind of button up the nets. They should be open at that point. So we are expecting this to be open before the end of summer, as we've been led to believe that all along. There are 4 change orders in the works. They are, I'll say relatively minimal. However, there are price tags to them. Right now, Ms. Bela and Mr. Lewis are viewing them and asking questions of our former architect and current construction manager about why this, why that, and is this already paid or not. So they up to 4 change orders may be on the agenda at the next meeting. And perhaps more importantly, we had a very productive meeting with representatives from BBS, our new architects, where we began discussing transitioning. We're just getting some information from Train on some of the ARP work that's scheduled to begin next year at Cook and Rutherford on heating and ventilation systems to begin planning out that transition. And we'll also be having discussions on transitioning them into task 4 of the current project. So it was a very productive meeting, and we're looking for them to kind of pick up where CPL will be. As for are the
Where is
so yes, so I believe plans were submitted to us. No, plans were requested by us at CPL. We actually get them just the other day. So we are holding them and we'll be turning them over to BBS at some point for their approval. The other thing we want to get a handle on is how much money is available yet in the $54 million.
So the plan would be to do whatever needs to, BBS can look at it, but then the plan is to put it out for bid for next summer,
Depending on what how BBS wants to handle it at that.
right? Because they may want to put it in with the,
Your best case scenario would
Okay.
probably be like storefront windows at Christmas time, if that was like, and if they were able to get materials and things of that nature,
right,
because that's,
but they may want to bid it out
yeah,
with the
yeah,
other things package. too, all at once.
yeah,
It still needs to be submitted to state.
say that, all that. Yeah,
Yeah, they were supposed to have those plans to state it in January.
yeah.
When do we start talking about the next?
Well, we already did that on Tuesday. No, we did. I think, they have a good understanding of what we would like to do. I think they first want to get a handle on task 4 and what's left of ARP. And then at some point, probably in the fall, convene the capital project committee, sit down with 1 or 2 of them, start talking about that. But we tentatively identified a referendum, a proposition, that's what, proposition on the May 18th budget vote.
And even them in the fall would be able to do that.
To start, they felt comfortable, we're still on track.
Last part, the elementary by telephone pole.
Yes, the triangle,
Yeah.
former triangle.
Said that, they were not interested, come back to change it.
Yeah, so what had happened was that was kind of cleared. And we had told them several months back that we wanted that widened kind of resumed triangle feature of it. CPL was not prompt enough in their return of a new design on what that would look like. And the contractor was basically done except for paved strip that you see now and the landscaping around it. That was the initial plan. So rather than hold it up anymore, while they were still on site, they were either going to leave it open or do what they did because they had no alternative plan for CPL at that point. So we said, finish it off, and that's what you see now.
So, what do you plan to run?
Bollards. So, I think we.
Any other questions regarding capital project? Thank you very much, Dr. Evans. They got the striping down on that, so nobody drives.
Yeah, that was a plan. They didn't have to know.
So moving on, in the agenda, you'll see upcoming events listed out there. Community events. There's a little content there regarding an article from the Sullivan County Democrat. And questions and comments from the public, Janet?
No, it's not.
Not at this time. Thank you very much, Janet. So moving on to superintendent update. Once again, Dr. Evans.
So good evening, everyone. We have a number of new staff members here to welcome to the Monticello family or welcome back to the Monticello family. So if you're here, if you could just please stand up and just give a wave. I don't believe Kira Seymour. Kira is here, or Kayla Yeager. They are here. Hugo Mercier is here. He's a new special ed teacher in the high school. Welcome. Weintraub will be a new guidance counselor in the high school. Caitlin Rusher will be a new guidance counselor at St. John Street. Welcome. Indra Fuzula will be a new guidance counselor at the high school. Welcome. Gary Sullivan will be a new school library media specialist at Cook Elementary School. Last but certainly not least, a Monticello alumni, Patrick Owens, will be a new physical education teacher. So thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to have you, and wish you the best of luck. Thank you. In my report, I attended the Rural Schools Conference last week, along with Mr. Groden, Ms. Weiner, Mr. Crumley, and Ms. Phelan. So a lot of good sessions. A lot of breakout sessions focusing on staff recruitment and retention. Not a localized problem here for Monticello. It's happening across the state. One, I guess, glimmer of hope there. Look, there's going to need to be a lot of work on the pipeline of getting people to go into education, becoming teachers. One glimmer of hope there that is being offered by both the New York State Education Department and the New York State Department of Labor is the New York State Educator Workforce Development Hub. They have a program called the Registered Apprenticeship Program. In essence, it's like a paid student teaching experience. So while it might not immediately fill a vacancy that we have, at least it allows us to recruit and hopefully attract qualified teachers through a paid student teaching experience. We would be paying that. However, there are grant monies to offset that, and it can be done through BOCES cross contract. So it's even, lower for, we get aid back on it. Okay. So we have a meeting set up with them next week to talk about what that looks like. So we are excited about that. And then I also attended a session run by two BOCES superintendents who are on the Board of Regents Blue Ribbon Commission on Graduation Measures. This has been going on for 5 years now. It began before the pandemic. It's now been revitalized. One of the things that they were adamant about is it was not about, their words, Regents exams, yes or no. So the Blue Ribbon panel on graduation measures really stayed clear of the future of Regents exams. They are talking more about different pathways to graduation. The outcome of their work later this fall will be a summary or a report to the Board of Regents. The Board of Regents will opt to do with that what they will. But since the Board of Regents commissioned it, one would anticipate there being changes based off this commission's findings. So more to come on that as it develops. And as I mentioned, we have a number of new teachers here tonight. We're continuing our personnel searches, including our administrative vacancies. I attended a Hall of Distinction Committee last night, and we are reopening a brief interval for seeking nominations. We'll be putting that out through our media outlets. We've begun discussions with Atlas Security, have 2 armed security guards at Monticello High School and Kaiser Middle School next year. The idea would be that they would supplement, add to our current SRO and security attendants, kind of add additional hours for us. So the idea would be that we have additional security after the school day. And we're also beginning next steps in the implementation of metal detectors in the high school for next year. And we've received kind of draft protocols from our legal counsel that are currently being worked on by our administrators. Any change there would have to go through policy committee, and it would go through the code of conduct. So there would be a public hearing to that effect. So that may or may not be ready by the start of the school year. However, we are moving that way. I'm attending a couple NISBA conferences over the next week. The virtual law conference on Monday and Tuesday, and next weekend or next Friday and Saturday, the Leadership and Education Conference. That's Friday, July 28th and 29th. I believe also attending are Ms. LaRusso, Ms. Mason Greco, Ms. Rivera, and Ms. Riley. No, Mr. Groden. So more to come on that, but looking forward to that. Some of us attended that last year, and it's a pretty good session. Last but not least, just want to kind of plant a seed, and we'll be coming back to this hopefully. But the April 2nd, 2024 Board of Education meeting is scheduled during our spring break. While many of us do work during spring break, there's a number of staff who take off, and there's also families and possibly board members who might go on vacation with their families during that week. I asked the board to consider rescheduling that to another date in April. That is, however, budget season. Our legal counsel usually comes out with a memo that has kind of all the dates and stuff that comes out in the fall. Once we receive that, we'll take a look at it and let you know what a good alternative date might be. You recall that April 1st is the constitutional deadline that the state legislature and the governor have to set a budget. They were very tardy on it this past year. So April 2nd might be optimistic to say for us to adopt the budget with a final state aid number in it. So I'm just asking you to consider that now, and we'll come back and talk about it later.
Any questions for Dr. Owens' report? Wendy?
Just a quick question. I also, as you said, attended the RSA. Is there, because I sat in on the career tech programs, are we going to receive some sort of like the other, I think it's NISBA does, an email so we can see the slides or share anything? I keep looking for an email to something so I could, share.
So I've been looking, when I put my report, it's a good question. When I put my report together, I went to the Rural Schools website, Google RSA NY. So I'm looking for it there, and if I get it, I'll pass it along. But I haven't seen anything yet. I was told that, and in years past, they've given it, so
Okay.
I would expect.
I just don't know if I missed it. Thank you.
Question about the cut in the education spending.
Yes,
What was discussed?
similar to what you had shared with the group, but yeah, so there's a link there that basically says an 80% reduction in Title I that's proposed. And this is Washington, and there's a lot of sausage making. So 80% reduction in Title I, which is a big chunk of money. You know, just as an amateur political scientist, I would say that's probably not going to be the final number. The advocate who was there, Tara Thomas from AASA, which is the National Superintendent's Organization, did talk about ways that AASA is lobbying that, and I'm looking for a kind of an advocacy letter that I would send to Congressman Molinaro and our senators about the effect that that type of cut would have on education here in Monticello. And I haven't seen, I'll look for things from NISBA too, but I would expect NISBA to have something to that.
Yeah. The rules that talk about the farm to table food at schools again, or
I
was that
didn't-
just last year's
I didn't see that
main
this
content?
Career and tech, CTE, everything I sat on was the FFA kids and all these other pathways and giving kids more opportunities. 60% was thrown at me. 60% of the junior class in most of our schools across New York State are actually going into career tech or being offered other pathways. So farm to table is going on in a lot of schools, but they didn't have a specific, I think last year they did a specific breakout on that, but everything that was discussed in the career technical education program, a big component of for all those schools, they have partnerships with everyone, and we're doing farm to table. But I do take into consideration some of the schools were larger, but some of the schools that I spoke to are actually our size. So, but it was partnerships with a lot of local people that helped fund that into the schools.
Wasn't the COSAR with Champlain Valley?
They didn't present again, no. That food service angle, no, but there was a lot of the career and tech
Tech, and that all feeds into that.
programs.
About with any consultants that would come to a school like they did with the COSAR last year? That was my
Yeah.
understanding.
I didn't attend those.
For the CTE, there is actually an organization that is paid for, and if I say this right, you were in that one with me?
I went for it 6 again.
They have the grant funding for those programs through some of the PERVA, and the two ladies were in there. So there's a whole, if we wanted to bring some of those pathways into our high school, separate from BOCES, or then work in to expand, there is an organization, I'm actually linked into the emails because I scanned, that does it for the schools, helps get all the paperwork into you by October. And then from there, they have grant funding and other programs to help assist.
That was
So-
the last day.
That was the last one, right?
But they also extrapolated on that, the ones that they were bringing into the schools was almost more of an introduction. So kids would be exposed to it. There's a kid that wants to be a carpenter, wants to be a welder, whatever the case may be. That's fully invested in it, that'll go to BOCES for that program. But maybe you have a kid that's kind of like, maybe, that doesn't want to invest into the BOCES program and go all the way, but isn't fully aware of what's out there. Because there's the guy who puts the nails together. There's also the guy who sells them the nails. There's also the guy, there's lots of other things associated with that
It's
trade,
the auto parts count.
with the auto parts counter, but there's a lot of other stuff there. And those were really kind of used as more of a general introduction into the industry, to let you know that that was out there and give you a little bit of a foundation that if you did want to go that way, you were exposed to it and you knew what you were kind of getting into. So
One more thing of interest was a lot of the schools, or the first one, they partner, like we partner with Sullivan County Community College, and we offer our college classroom here. A lot of those schools have partnered with more agricultural type, Skill and other SUNYs. So they're actually bringing a more career tech education, college program credits in for kids that want to go down different pathway. That's everything. They're giving them college credits through partnership in the classrooms. So they were taking the career tech and also bringing it in on the college level through different partnerships, which I thought was very smart.
It's like a parallel program to our cafeteria food. In a way, because
well, Well, kind of what I think, there was nothing actually explicit regarding farm and table and school cafeteria programs. Pretty much revolved around CTE, retainment, recruitment of employees. I mean, that was probably 95% of all the breakout sessions. So there was nothing explicitly talking at this particular rural schools conference about what you're kind of alluding to. Food services.
We actually, I spoke to after some of the people, and if you want, I'll give you information after. I have all their names. The one woman went into 3 different schools and did the farm to table and set up the schools. She's also part of that. I don't know if you were in the school board association. There's a whole group out towards Delhi that does the maple sugar. They have a whole maple syrup tap system going on. They're selling it in stores and making a business out of it. But the woman who had them, the teacher, I should say, who had them when they were like in 6th, 7th grade, has moved on to 3 different schools to create those programs, help teachers get involved. And her big concept is farm to table. So she's helped take the agricultural end, because she's an agricultural teacher, to bring that to the school. So I do have some of that information if you're interested.
And they had
That's
3
something-
table cafeterias.
Oh my God.
Right, I mean, if that was something that could be, I'm not sure if that could be talked about on the retreat in a couple days, or if that's not something that you talk there, but mainly what I remember from last year's Rural Schools Association conference was when people came back, they were all jazzed up about how do we get all our food to improve. And one of the ideas has been implemented, but it's not all the way there yet. I think we could all agree on that. And so perhaps one of the pieces would be to have a consultant come, just like the New York State Educator Workforce Development Hub is coming and giving ideas. It would be somebody coming through all of the cafeterias and schools and saying, okay, this is what you could do with what you have. And then, so,
Yeah, and we've started those discussions with local agencies. Cornell Cooperative is one. A Single Bite is another one. And Sullivan 180 is kind of working with them to that end, that, bring consultants to work with food services on, not just farm to table per se, but, rather expanding healthy offerings for students.
then would they be coming in to talk about their findings or not? Is it just?
No, they'd be providing staff development to our cafeteria staff food service. Yeah.
It's finding the partnerships with
Yeah.
like cooperative extension. And there's a lot of information, I mean, like, I got names, even of people that they might be up northern Albany, but they've got a partnership with someone in Western New York that they're getting their kind of corn from, let's
So
say.
we are looking for those partnerships, and I went in to sign some documents, sat down with Dr. Evans for a second. Our head cook came in with Dixie cups and was walking it around central office, testing out recipes that he wanted to implement in the upcoming year. So it's actively being worked on. It's obviously a known issue with the district. So, we hired somebody last year. He is actively trying to work with what we have, but put out a menu that will be satisfying for everybody.
One, the greenhouse inside or the one outside? I don't believe so.
Something that's going to be,
Well, there's a middle school garden club, and I don't believe it was filled this year. Okay, a club advisor. I don't think there's a staff member who took that stipend position on. I could look into it more.
I'm sorry, I should ask you sort of roundtable. Did you guys find out anything about having the salad bar over at St. John's? Was that conversation?
Yeah, we'll do. Yeah, they're on the calendar. Maybe tours haven't been scheduled yet, but we do have a meeting in each of the buildings on the calendar. So when we get closer to those dates, we should be mindful of going in there a little bit early to.
Well, we'll have to go in early, also look to see what committees might be meeting prior to, and then kind of figuring it out when those dates get closer.
If it's on there, if not, we will. Thank you. I'll go check it out. Is it on there, Janet? Do you know?
No.
Not?
Okay, so we'll be sure that. Are we good with Dr. Evans? All right, Assistant Superintendent for Business update, Lisa?
This evening, you have the budget and revenue status, claims auditor report, and the school lunch profit and loss all for the month of May. I'm asking the board to approve the summer transportation bid for one of our students who resides up in the Albany area and attends a school up there. We have to provide that child.
Any questions for Lisa?
Not particularly about that, but it is about the warrant, so it is financial. When we wait to the action item, yes, I just. I saw that we purchased 2 buses on the warrant. Are those part of the cycling part, or did we need 2 more buses and 2 are coming off? I just want to make sure we're still on the cycling.
We ordered those buses a year ago, and it took that long for them to come in. So yeah, that's why, yeah, but we are still on schedule.
Okay, good.
We are going to apply PA grant again to see.
Is that electric bus?
Yeah.
Okay, got it, got it. Any other questions for Lisa? Thank you very much, Mrs. Bala. Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum, Teresa.
Good evening. I'm gonna pass this in both directions. If you could take one, it kind of applies to one of the contracts that you'll be approving tonight. So on my list of things to talk to you about, the paper that's coming around right now is the People in Mind of New York agreement. Now, these are all vendors that are working through the school violence prevention grant that's fully funded under the grant, but you had at a previous board meeting asked for some form of curriculum or indication of what each one of these vendors will be talking with kids about. So I was able to acquire this from this particular vendor. And then, as we mentioned, Lyle will be in either the end of August or beginning of September to answer any other questions you have about any of the other vendors that he has working with our students. This group tends to work more with the secondary students, and you'll see in that packet the types of things that they are talking about. They may not cover all of this, but this is kind of where they are. So that was the first one on my list. The other contract that you have that you're approving tonight is with the vendor Change Impact. So Change Impact works with the school violence prevention grant. As part of the requirements of that grant, we have to have an outside evaluator who looks at the grant. So that's primarily their job with the school violence prevention, and the funding for that is paid for through the grants. We also use Change Impact as a district to look at grant opportunities. So anytime Dr. Evans, Lisa, I see a grant or anybody else that might be something that we could qualify for, we always have the opportunity to reach out to Change Impact to see if they feel that way also. And if they would be willing to write it for us, they get a portion of, well, they get paid for doing that. They also have said before, you're not going to qualify for this grant, so don't waste your time. Or it's a really easy grant, we don't want to charge you. Teresa, you go ahead and write it, or have someone else in the district write it, because it'll be quick and then you don't have to pay for it. So they're a really good organization for us to work with. The third contract that I have that pertains to my department is the McGraw-Hill contract. Just so you know, that it's a very small professional development this summer that we're doing with teachers between Wonders, which is our 3 through 5 ELA program, and also Open Court, which is our K-2 reading program. We're trying to get teachers the opportunity to get professional development in both of those curriculums for the next school year. So that's what that contract is for. The last thing I wanted to just mention before I finish is our 3- and 4-year-old numbers. So I gave you an update at the last board meeting. They've changed slightly. We're doing really, really well, which speaks volumes for our program. Our 3-year-old count at Healthy Kids is 14, so it's at its max. Our 4-year-old count for Healthy Kids is at 19, so we have room for one more. Our SJS program for 3-year-olds is at 46, so it's full. And our SJS program for 4-year-olds is at 63. I believe, Lisa, correct me if I'm wrong, we have room for 12 more. Yep, so we're hoping to get to 80 and then we will be full there. So again, speaks volumes for that program. So does anybody have any questions?
Does that include self-contained?
It's, well, inclusionary classrooms. Yep.
Ashley?
Question about the people in mind of New York. I noticed the hours. Is that just an hour a day? There's
I think it could-
180 days for 190 hours. I'm just wondering, like, what is it just for like a couple
They
hours?
may come in for the whole day and work with different groups of kids one time. They may come in and target a group of kids for 1 or 2 hours. I don't know their exact schedule, and I don't know that their exact schedule has been made yet. But the grant allocation is for that number of hours. And so that's why, that's the assumption. They may not do all of those hours this year. It could be less than that.
So it could be after school and it could be during school.
I just want to thank you for putting everything in the list.
Oh, sure.
I have one question. So the children that are over at St. John Street, so 3 and 4-year-olds, are they getting the, they have like an IEP services? We have enough psychologists? No, we don't.
Yeah, probably not, just because I know we've been looking and that's one of those areas that's very hard to fill. I don't know that answer for sure, but I know that they're posting for that and hoping to get everything filled.
I know that every day I go in and look at talent and there's no new applicants.
And that's not just a Monticello.
I know. So now, I know you don't have person to provide the services, but what are we doing to, I mean, the children go outside of the district to get the services? How is this?
Well, I suppose there could be some consultant services that are procured through the CPSE or the CSE. Or it would be compensatory time, or we would ask a current staff member to do more of it and compensate them more. You know, that's beyond their contractual bag.
Do we have retired? That we could speak to, is that something that?
We have one who's retiring in this fall. So that'd be another vacancy.
I mean, you could, that person would do it.
I think we've tried to tap into that, but you know, retired individuals in related service professions that want to work are pretty sought after. And so I don't know that that's an option, but I know there's been a lot of think outside the box thoughts on how to fill this.
Plus you're competing with the private sector and it's the positions that you can.
Ashley?
Yes. I just would like more information on the McGraw-Hill. I realize that's like a textbook company, Pearson, all that. So what does McGraw-Hill do?
That was the one I just mentioned, that's
Sure.
Wonders and Open Court. So Wonders is our 3 through 5 ELA program. And Open Court is our K2 ELA program. So McGraw-Hill is the parent company for both of those. So they provide us with all of the materials, and they also provide professional development for the teachers on that curriculum and how it applies and ways to use it in the classroom. And they also coach. So they all come in and watch teachers teach and provide additional resources. This particular contract is for summer professional development in both of those areas, Wonders and Open Court.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then change impact. I remember this from last year. When I go online and I just say change impact, it says helping social impact organizations achieve results and advance equity. And then it goes down, it says 35,000 professionals trained, 200 million funds raised, 120 plus partners on strategy, DEI, and capacity building projects. So my question is, and then at the end, it says these are our partners, and there's 20 partners, including Boys and Girls Club, things like that, 4-H. Is this, it's 2 sessions, sounds like 2 sessions, October 1st and April 1st. Are they geared towards social
So their
impact
main,
and
their
equity?
main job here in our district is to monitor as an outside evaluator for the school violence prevention grant. And that's a requirement of the grant. We have to have vendors from the outside take a look at how we're spending the money, how the grant's being dispersed, the types of activities that we're using through that grant funding. And so that's their job. That's what they do. And then they also work within this contract that's on here is just specifically for school violence as an outside evaluator. They also work within our district to help us write grants.
Do they propose things that we should do? Is that what you said?
They will contact us and say, hey, there's this really great grant around XYZ and you have a population for that. So we would suggest you look at potentially writing it. And they will never say, we have to write it. They will suggest that it's a really big grant and, then we will go to them to have them write it. But if it's something really small and manageable, they will still do it for us, but they will say it's really small and manageable. If someone on your staff can probably do it. So they advise and then they get paid based on the hours put into writing the grant, whether we get it or not.
This is the maximum what they would get. At this
For
point.
school violence prevention as an outside evaluator only. That's what you have in front of you is only for that particular purpose.
Only for school violence and to audit it. Just auditing the programs to see that it meets requirements of the state.
We have to file a report with state ed on this grant and you need an evaluator to do that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Very much. Moving on from there to action items. Mrs. Greco,
I mentioned that we bring up for discussion, action items T1 through T7.
have a second on that? Made by Ms. Jersey. Any discussion? All in favor? So ordered. Ms. Greco,
Motion that we approve action items T1 through T7.
have a second on that? Made by Mrs. Holmes. Any discussion? All in favor? So ordered. Thank you so much. Moving on to correspondence. Nothing listed at this point in the agenda. Janet, did anybody come forward? Not at this time. So no questions and comments from the public, which brings us to U3, adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Made by Mrs. LaRusso, seconded by Mrs. Rivera. Any discussion? All in favor? So ordered. Thank you so much. Congratulations to everybody who got brought on tonight. Best uniform ever.